Well, for the first time in 5 years, the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, is holding public hearings in Washington. This is so rare. It is happening at this moment, and the reason is they are rather concerned about the February crash of one particular flight, Continental 3407. All 49 people on board this plane and one person on the ground died when the plane took a nosedive into a house near Buffalo, New York. Remember this? Now serious questions are being raised about the qualifications of the pilot. According to preliminary findings, he had failed several flight tests before this crash and was making small talk with his co-pilot when the plane was below 10,000 feet moments before the crash. That's a clear violation of federal aviation rules. And the question this morning is he the only one who may have been improperly trained? Robert Mark is a former corporate pilot and editor of jetwine.com, which is an aviation industry website. Rob, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let me just start by this. No one wants to indict the memory of this pilot who certainly paid the ultimate price if indeed he was poorly trained. And our condolences are with his family and his friends and his loved ones. But this is an important subject on a go-forward basis to know whether our pilots, in particular those of these regional airlines, are being properly trained. A concern raised not by this anchor, but by an NTSB official and others within the NTSB. This guy had failed 5 flight tests before he was the captain of this Colgan Air flight. 3 before he got to Colgan Air, 2 while he was working for Colgan Air. Should he have been behind the controls of this plane?
Well, I think the important point to remember is that there is a difference in training, whether the industry would like to agree to it or not. There is a difference in training between what the regional airline pilots receive and what the pilots of the majors receive. If this were a pilot for one of the major airlines and he'd failed that many tests, he would never have been in the left seat of that airplane.
Let me ask you about this, because something that jumped out at me from Colgan Air was they said, first of all, they defended his abilities, but then they said, oh, we didn't know about those 3 earlier failures when we hired him. There were 5 total, 2 while he was working for them, 3 before. They said they did not know about the earlier failures. How can that be? Is there not an investigation by airlines of a pilot's flight history before they hire him or her?
Well, as I understand this particular situation, the person that was the captain of this airplane was at a flight school prior to being hired by Colgan.
Right.
And again, if the airline did not specifically ask about this person's training record, they would not have known. Again, did they not know because they didn't ask, or because they asked and someone didn't give them the correct information? We're not really sure at this point.
You know, as Bill pointed out earlier, there's been an incredible and really impressive safety record among pilots and U.S. Airlines over the past few years. The number of crashes has been at a record low. But this year, we've had some trouble, including with this regional flight. And now the NTSB taking it so seriously, they're looking at the training of these regional pilots. I mean, should we feel safe getting on these smaller aircraft that go on regional flights?
Well, I think there's certainly some concern. I think the NTSB official you're referring to is Robert Sumwalt, who
yes,
made a speech in Washington last fall, and he called into question the training of regional pilots even then, and that was before the Buffalo crash. I'm hoping at least that the people that lost their lives won't have died in vain, and that the NTSB and the FAA will get together and realize that something really does need to be very closely looked at when it comes to training in regional airlines.
How different is the training?
Same as it is.
How different is it?
Well, you know, it's a matter of degree. I mean, in regional airline flying now, they use the most sophisticated simulators that they do at the major carriers. It's a matter of experience. I mean, when you have people that have less experience training people that have even less experience, it kind of falls backwards. And again, it's that total flying experience level that is really the issue that we're focusing on right now.
Because it requires a lot more hours in the air, I guess.
Fatigue issues.
It requires a lot more hours
correct.
in the air to become a commercial airline pilot, as we see on a Delta or a U.S. Airways.
To become a good
major.
one.
Now, let me ask you this, because you mentioned that they have the same simulator training as the pilots who fly the big jets. What I read contradicts that. They said that this particular captain, who we're talking about, Captain Marvin Renslow, that what happened in that flight in Buffalo was the plane started going dangerously slow. A stall warning alerted in the cockpit, and the autopilot turned on, pushing the nose of the plane down. That helps it pick up speed. To avoid the stall, you need to pick up speed. But then they say that the captain, who had never trained for this particular situation in a simulator, did the wrong thing by jerking the nose of the plane back up, and tragedy ensued. How could that be that he had never trained for a stall situation like this?
Well, of course, stalling, we're talking about the wing losing lift and the airplane stopping, not flying anymore. And that's a very, very simple maneuver that we're taught from flying small airplanes. But it is strange, but in a lot of the big simulators, they simply do not train you to that standard because it's considered, well, some people get scared when they get into that situation. They don't like it. And so they just tell you that this is what you're probably going to see if the airplane does this. But when it really happens, trust me, it's really an eye-opener. And we need to be doing that, and we're not.
It's a really sad situation. And again, I mean, I feel for his family and for the family of those lost on board this plane. I'm glad the NTSB is looking into it. I know you are too. And we're going to be following this hearing today. It's so rare to hear them speak publicly about something like this, and we're monitoring it. As they make news, we'll bring it to you. Rob, thanks so much for coming on with your expertise.
You're most welcome.
It's Fox and Friends.
She got paid just $16,000 last year and worked in a coffee shop to make ends meet. We're talking about the first officer of that plane that crashed near Buffalo. But before you blame her, stay tuned. We'll tell you more of the story.
Low pay and little sleep for a recipe for disaster in the crash of Flight 3407. A lot of attention now being paid to the pilots. But how much blame does the airline deserve?
Commercial pilot Robert Mark is the editor for jetwine.com, an airline industry blog. Robert, I was stunned by this. $16,000 for a co-pilot. Were you?
Well, actually, not really. It's pretty much the industry norm, of course, and that problem is it adds other problems as well. I mean, like fatigue, because some of these people are working second jobs just to live.
Well, exactly, and they also don't have a place. Like, she was based, this co-pilot was based in New York, but she lived in the Seattle area. So a lot of pilots have crash pads, like apartments, but she didn't make enough money to have a crash pad. So she was severely sleep deprived on this particular flight. But here's my question to you, Robert. Are the pilots to blame in this situation for not having adequate training? Or is Colgan Air, or is Continental the parent company?
Well, I think that certainly everybody points to the pilots. I mean, and let's face it, the pilots are the people at the controls and are the ones everybody looks at. But the culture of this industry is set by the management of the company. And that's something that nobody is talking about. And I think we need to be, because, again, the training standards are set by the FAA, but how they're implemented is up to the company.
You know, about 80% of the people watching us right now are on small planes like this at some point, maybe even this year. And I'm stunned that the co-pilot in charge of my life would be making $16,000. Look at the other, and she had to have a part-time job in a coffee shop too. Look at the other jobs that make just about that. And compared to the importance in terms of my life and death, let's take a look at those others that we've collected and compare it. I mean, number one, you have a grocery store cashier. They make more than a co-pilot. You have security guards, $21,000. They make more than the co-pilot. For goodness sakes, housekeepers, a tough job. My life's not in the balance with my housekeeper. $17,000. Janitors, $4,000 more, up to $19,000 on the average. This is absolutely outrageous.
It really is, and I think that what people need to understand is that these airplanes are not unsafe. But I don't think the level of safety is the same as it is at the major carriers, and the financial aspect of this is certainly a function of that. And again, if you ask the airline management, they're going to say, hey, we didn't force these people to take these jobs, which is true, but then who set the pay standards?
But Robert, so are you telling our viewers today that they should not fly these planes right now until these standards change?
No, as I said, I mean, there are an awful lot of good people out there that are in charge of these airplanes. They really are. But when you have pay standards that are so low, I think it's indicative of some problems within the industry. And you do get people that are willing to work for this, and some good people just won't.
Go to jetwine.com, find out more. Robert Mark, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
19 minutes after the hour.